Snow had started to fall over Independence Square an hour before the funeral was due to start, and had fallen more heavily since. Alex Hicks adjusted the coffin so that it rested more comfortably on his shoulder and remembered the day when he'd met Carl for the first time. It had been on the western approach to Bakhmut in late February, and it had been snowing then too. Hicks was at the back of the coffin, opposite JJ, an infantryman who had signed up at about the same time as he had. The two men at the front, Pablo and Francois, were Spanish and French, respectively. Their unit included former paratroopers, legionnaires, an ex-cop from Milwaukee, and two brothers from Leeds who'd never picked up a weapon before they arrived here 6 months earlier. One of the brothers, a brawny 20-something by the name of Simon, was into his books and his history, and said he'd been inspired to follow in the footsteps of George Orwell, explaining that Orwell had fought against fascism in Spain. Fascists were still the enemy, Simon said, only now it was Putin's fascism, rather than Franco's, that they were fighting against. They'd had the conversation a week before Simon had stood on a mine. His leg had been blown off below the knee, and the only reason he was still alive was that Carl and Hicks had risked their necks to go out under enemy shelling to bring him back to the trench. Simon had been medevaced back to Kyiv and then Lviv, and was in Poland now, undergoing post-surgery recovery and stabilisation. The four men carried the casket behind the priest as he swung a censer to release a cloud of sweet-smelling incense. They reached the bier in the middle of the square, lowered the casket onto it, and then stepped back and saluted. Hicks looked around. The column with the statue of Berehenia atop it was to his left, and the golden dome of St. Michael's Monastery was to his right. 50 or 60 mourners gathered around the casket, and they turned to the priest as he began the panikhida, the memorial service Hicks had witnessed more times in the last 3 months than he would have liked. Blessed is our God, always, now, and ever, and unto ages of ages. The crowd responded with a quiet Amen, then crossed themselves right to left in the traditional way. The casket, decorated with the blue and gold Ukrainian flag, was open. Hicks looked down to see Carl's face. He looked peaceful now, a jarring contrast to Hicks's last memory of him. They had been resting at a safe house when it had been hit by Russian artillery. The shells had detonated all around them. Hicks had been spared by dumb luck. He'd been in the bathroom and had been shielded by the wall, although 3 of the others, including Carl, had not been so fortunate. 2 of the men had lost limbs, and Carl had been killed outright when a chunk of shrapnel tore a hole in his chest.